name is Weston Blelock. Thank you very much for coming out to our fall series program on the smart meter. We're very pleased to have with us several politicos, including Jack Hayes, who's running against Assemblyman Cahill, who is just a terrible representative as far as representing us on smart meters. I'll tell you a little story. Michelle Hertz, who stopped smart meters in New York, was introduced to Terry Bernardo, who's with us, who's the former chair of the Ulster County Legislature. We organized a meeting with Cahill, and so during the meeting, Cahill looked at the floor during the whole conversation, and then at the end, he said to Michelle that he would not help her on the smart meter issue. So he is, after 1,000 signatures that we garnered on a petition here in Woodstock for an opt-out without penalty and fee, we presently have a proceeding with the Public Service Commission. Cahill is nowhere on this issue. If we need representation, I recommend that we listen to Jack Hayes. Jack Hayes.
Good evening, and this is sort of impromptu. I hadn't expected to speak, but I appreciate the opportunity. I am my past has been, I spent 33 years with the New York State Police, the last 10 of which I was in something called emergency management, which covers a vast area of different functions. What is very significant about it is the different overlays, and what you're dealing with is overlays. You're dealing with an energy overlay, which is a very powerful entity. Plus you have a state overlay on top of that with the Public Service Commission. And going way back to the beginning, you have your constitutional rights to privacy. So in many respects, it all boils down to some very basic premises. But I retired from state police. I became town supervisor in Gardner. I was endorsed across the board by everyone. I served 2 years with Terry Bernardo in the Ulster County Legislature. The Ulster County Legislature was not really prepared for a woman chairman, and it was something of a struggle to push that forward and make that happen, but we did it. There was this side, and then there was a group of people from both sides in the middle. I've seen those circles sometimes, and we were in the middle, Charlie and I. And what we did, and what we usually do, is we strive to serve the people, to do what the people need, not what maybe a Republican person or a Democratic person or someone else needs, but all the people, because you always serve all the people when you're in office. There's no two ways about it. So there was not going to be any challenge to Mr. Cahill this year had I not jumped into the race. So I didn't think that was right for somebody who's been there for 18 years and who seems to be getting more and more arrogant as time goes on. I've heard this story, as I've been working very hard for the last 2 months, but I've heard this story over and over and over again. This is not a news message, and that's not what it's about. I call myself a citizen's representative. I'm not a politician. And I'm not trying to tell you what to do. The power comes from the bottom up. You are the ones who provide the power. And I go, when I represent the people. And they don't have labels on them. I'm not big into labels. So basically, I don't want to take up a lot of your time. We have a very important message here. But I appreciate the opportunity to say hello and let you see who I am. And I thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
So we're going to have speaker talk now. Dafna Tachover's We Are the Evidence is an advocacy group for the protection of the rights of those injured by wireless radiation. She developed ES in 2009. She's licensed to practice law in New York State and Israel, and she has an MBA. She also has a technical background which dates from her service in the Israeli army. There she was a communications and computers officer and commander of the computer center of the Israeli Defense Force Operations Center and headquarters. Dafna's efforts in Israel led to significant change there. In 2012, she submitted a case to the Israeli Supreme Court asking for an injunction banning the use of Wi-Fi in schools. Following her lawsuit and media efforts, she gained the mainstream media's complete support, which led to growing public awareness. This has significantly impacted the stance of government officials who now admit to the harm caused by non-thermal levels of wireless technology radiation and who acknowledge that the current safety standards are obsolete. Dafna has been featured by the international media on the subject of ES. A short movie can be found of her on time.com. It's called Searching for the Golden Cage. And this helped to mainstream awareness in this country. In addition, her condition was recently written up in New York Magazine, an article titled, What It's Like to Be Allergic to Wi-Fi. It's pretty horrific. So here's Dafna.
Thank you for having me tonight, and I understand that this group has been going on for a while, so it's nice to see so many people who care about this topic and who's willing to take action about this topic. I'm going to start, you watched the movie, I worked together with Kevin Modas, and what we decided to do essentially is to, just like the industry has its lobbyists, and who's spending all their time in DC, it's time that we as a group will have our own lobbyist in DC, and that's what we're trying to do. But we're just two people. And I know there's a lot of other people who would like to help us, but a lot of these people are sick. But we are going to now focus our efforts in DC. And we need a lot of support. And I prepared a sheet here that Preston's going to give to you guys. If anyone thinks that he would like or she would like to help us, please fill out this sheet. There's different ways to help, and I think that everyone can find a way to help. So please fill out this sheet if you feel that you want or can do something to help. And when we end our discussion, if you please give it to us, and we'll follow up. Again, I'm not promising that the follow-up will be fast because we're overloaded and overworked, but we'll do our best. We're building this infrastructure right now to start do these actions in a more organized way, and so we can use all the help. So thank you very much. As Weston said, I will say a few words about how I got to this, although he did cover this a little bit. In 2009, until 2009, I was an early adopter and avid user of wireless technology. My life was pretty nice. I lived in Princeton, New Jersey. I worked in Manhattan for an investment company. My ex-husband was a doctor and a PhD in molecular biology. Got a job at Princeton University. We said it's a good time to start a family. We moved. I was about to start my law practice. I was actually the gadget person. I'm the person that everyone's still, even now, contacting to ask questions about technology and what to buy, etc., etc. And I was the first to get the Wi-Fi connection to the laptop so I can travel and have internet everywhere. I met my ex-husband stealing Wi-Fi when nobody knew what Wi-Fi is. So I was really, I was studying to the bar in Starbucks, and that's how I met him. Anyway, so I was the embodiment of this technology. I love this technology. I didn't have a home phone. I had only a cell phone. Buying a new laptop was for me the best thing. I love my laptop like nothing else. So in 2009, I went to buy a new laptop for my law practice, and I came home, and weird things started to happen. Now, the thing is, 6 months before, my ex-husband saw me talking on a cell phone, and he looked at me, and he said, Dafna, maybe you can take 10 minutes breaks between calls, because I would be on the phone all the time. And for some reason, that situation really stayed in my mind. I remember looking at him and smiling, not saying anything, but to myself thinking, oh, worst case scenario, I'll be 70, I'll get a brain tumor. Everything causes cancer. Now, I feel really ashamed of myself because I consider myself a pretty curious person who likes to know things, who But I did not ask my ex-husband why does he tell me not to use a cell phone or to take breaks between calls. And my ex-husband is one of the smartest people I know, who knows science in and out. He sits on editorial boards of many journals, and I still did not ask him why. I did not go to the internet to check why. 6 months later, my life collapsed. So I went to buy a new laptop, and I got home excited. The area near the mouse pad was vibrating, and I started getting tingling in my hands and my feet. I left the laptop, all was okay. I thought something is wrong with the laptop. I probably get some static electricity. And I ended up changing 5 laptops in 3 weeks, all of them causing me symptoms, and the symptoms were increasing. And I remember the 3rd laptop, my ex-husband was talking to me, and I could not understand what he was saying. It was as if someone was talking Chinese to me. And with the 3rd laptop, I went actually to Apple Store and asked him, listen, this and this have been happening. This is the 3rd laptop that I'm buying, which is not okay. And please check the laptop and verify that it's really wrong, that I'm not imagining all of this. And also I asked him, did you have other people complaining about the same symptoms? So the store manager told me, oh no, I guess your body just doesn't like Apple computers. If you go to Apple website, you find hundreds, if not thousands of people complaining about the same symptoms I've had from all the Apple devices. Headaches, nauseousness, heart palpitation, etc., etc. So this is how I got to this topic. Once I became sick, my condition deteriorated very fast. I ended up living in my car for 7 months, and it sounds horrible, but I can assure you it's more horrible than it sounds.
Less horrible.
I'm sorry?
It's less horrible.
For me, it's
More horrible.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
worse
I see.
than it sounds. And I can tell you, it was never on my life plan to live in my car, and I was trying desperately to find places I can sleep in. I could not find any escape from this. My life was pretty miserable for 2 years until decided to divorce my husband and move to an isolated place because I couldn't see how, with being sensitive to wireless world, I can live in a wireless world. So I was looking for an isolated place, and I moved to the Catskills, to the mountaintop between Windham and Hunter. I checked 500 houses, and I found one house that I could tolerate. It was an isolated cabin in the middle of the woods from the 19th century, not insulated, but it was the only place I could actually breathe. And I spent there 3.5 years, and it's really saved my life. I mean, I completely avoided this technology. I did not leave my house except to go once a month to shop for food, and sometimes I could not even do that. I mean, I had people do it for me. So I've been through a lot with this, and once I moved there, I learned that they are deploying Wi-Fi in schools in Israel, and I could not bear the thought that what I'm going through is going to be a destiny shared by many other children in schools. So I got myself out of bed and opened the computer, and it was painful, but I decided that I have to do something about it, and I submitted that lawsuit to the Supreme Court. I had no idea how I'm going to do it, considering I'm 6,000 miles away, and there's no way I'm going to go on a plane. But we did it. You know, when there is a will, there is a way. And we actually kept this case in court for 3 years, and we lost a year ago. But we lost because at the end of it, the Supreme Court got really scared. And it's a long story. I don't want to go into it. I'll be happy to talk about it another time. But a lot of good things happened as a result of this case. I mean, we had a whole strategy in place with this case. I mean, we knew from the beginning that the chances are slim. And the reason I'm talking about it is because it has relevance to what we're doing now. We thought that the chances are going to be slim, but I thought this would be an excellent way to create awareness and to create change and generate PR and generate a lot of media awareness. And that's exactly what happened. So while we lost the case in the Supreme Court, we created a lot of change through this case. And the reason this whole correlates to this conversation is because the same strategy I was using in Israel is the same strategy I want to deploy now here in fighting this 5G and all this wireless technology. The approach in Israel was essentially that we have to attack in different ways. So we have to sue the government, not the industry, take them to court, and try and expose whatever it is that they're doing there. with that, we wanted to generate PR and then get people to be aware of this topic and increase the people on the ground fighting this and creating more and more awareness. Another thing that it was important for me to do was to show that there is an epidemic of sickness. When I became electrosensitive, everyone would tell me, oh, don't talk about it. Oh, the public is not ready to hear about it. People would think you're crazy. People would not believe you. And I said, I do not accept that. If I'm sick from this, it means that it's very real. And it means that there's a lot of other people who are sick from it. And if something is wrong, you have to talk about it. And I'm not going to be scared by people telling me that maybe people think I'm crazy or whatever. I have to talk about it. And it was really weird because a lot of activists on our side were the ones to tell me, don't talk about it because it would cause us harm and it would make all of us look crazy. And there's still a lot of activists who do not talk about electrosensitivity. And it's ridiculous because electrosensitivity is the real epidemic. I think that at least 1 out of every 4 people I talk to have symptoms. If you ask people around you if they have tingling in the hands when they use a cell phone or pain in the head, you see that at least 1 in 4 people have these symptoms, and that is electrosensitivity. I especially remember one conversation I had with a journalist from a financial paper in Israel, the leading financial paper. So she called me and she asked me, so what is the rate of people who are suffering from wireless radiation-related sicknesses? I said 50%. And then I continue, I know you think I'm exaggerating, but I'm actually not. And then I told her, ask how many people around you have pain in the head when they use a cell phone. She said, I have it, everyone have it. I said, I rest my case. And that's the thing. And everyone is getting harmed by it. Every minute that this technology is on, everyone is getting harmed by it. And as I said, electrosensitivity is the number one, it's like maybe the fastest manifestation. I don't know if it's the worst manifestation, it's definitely the largest manifestation. And the fastest one. We have electrosensitivity, we have cancers, and I want to add something about what they said about the NTP study. The NTP study found that the radiation is causing brain tumors, heart tumors. Not just that, they proved that it's causing DNA damage and neurological damage. So we have a lot of fertility problems. I mean, as for cancer, this week came an article in the UK saying that there's a 40% increase in cancers in children. And this radiation does not only cause brain tumors and heart tumors, it's causing various cancers, it's also causing existing cancer to develop faster and more aggressive. We have fertility problems in Israel. It's not in Israel. Worldwide, there is a 40% reduction in male sperm in the past 10 years. 40% reduction. In Israel, 25% of couples are now in fertility treatments. So 1/4 of the population cannot do the one thing that is necessary for the survival of our species. This is unprecedented. And we have also autism. 10 years ago, we had 1 in 1,000 children with autism. Now we have 1 in 65.
1 in 54, dear.
1 in 54 is for male, and 1 in 80 something for female.
No,
so it's an
even higher than that now.
Okay, so the data I have.
I'm a walking encyclopedia on this stuff.
No worries.
I'm Robert Baer Beneta. We talked on the phone.
No worries. So.
One of the things I want to bring up on here's running my mouth real quick.
Yeah.
One of the things that really necessary to get everybody on board with knowledge is to clarify. When you mention the word electrosensitivity or electrohypersensitivity, people look at you like a deer in the headlights. Don't they not? Absolutely. I know. I've been there for the last 17 years doing this. Trust me. Children. Anyway, before we go on that road, we have to come together as a complete unit and describe this as microwave radiation sickness. That's what it is. Bottom line. You can call it anything else you want, but every symptom you describe, you go back in history in the early stages of microwave radiation sickness and look at the symptoms.
That is very correct.
Thank you.
Anyway, so we have, as I said, autism, and there's ADHD. The number of children suffering from ADHD has been doubled in the past 10 years. I know in Israel, for 1 year, there was a 76% increase in consumption of Ritalin in 1 child in 1 year. So we have an epidemic going on, and everyone is looking the other way. So it was important for me as a strategy to bring this out and ensure that people know that there is an epidemic, that there is an increase in all these conditions, and that there is science to support that these conditions can be caused by wireless technology. And there's nothing that can explain this no other cause except wireless technology can explain this exponential increase in these conditions. There could be other, I'm not saying that autism, the only reason autism, the only increase for autism is because of wireless technology. I'm sure there are other factors as well, but there's no factor that can explain this exponential increase except wireless technology. Another thing that we were trying to do is, my message from the beginning, as I said in that show, was, I'm not after the industry, I'm after the government. Industry is out there for money, and it is the job of our government official to protect us as a public from them. And those who do not do their job betray the public trust and should be accountable for this. And unless we demand that these people be accountable for what they're doing, nothing will change. And I was sending this very aggressive message in various ways. And the thing is, they already saw that I'm suing the Supreme Court, going to the Supreme Court to sue the government. So they took notice, and the government official did become aware and scared. And that created probably the most significant change in Israel, because we got the two government officials on this topic, the head of the radiation department in the equivalent of the EPA, his name is Professor Steven Gelbeck, to admit everything. We had him in front of a government empowerment committee saying that the safety standard that he himself put together is not protecting the population. He said the children are sick from electrosensitivity. He said that the thermal standard is irrelevant, etc., etc. The other person is, her name is Professor Sigal Sadetsky. She's the person in the Ministry of Health who is responsible for this issue. And she's in a way for me the Israeli Tom Wheeler, but she got to admit everything as well. The only time they did not admit it, after we proved to the Supreme Court that these people say these things in various meetings, when the Supreme Court asked for their affidavit, they lied to the Supreme Court. Yes, so, but that's okay. We're not done with them yet. And so, as I said, so change happened. And my assumption was that, people will say, oh, the media does not believe us, blah, blah, blah. And I say, guys, the media is no different. There are a lot of people in the media who are sick as well. And that's exactly what happened. Every media I spoke to, at least one person of that crew, one team, had symptoms. So it was very easy for them to relate to what I'm saying. So nobody thought I'm crazy. Nobody thought that this is conspiracy theory or whatever people say. They actually heard, understood. And if this message has been transferred in an articulate way where you know the fact, they believe it and they put it out there as is. But I still think that there are differences between the US and Israel. I do think that in Israel the media is much more free, much more honest, much more aggressive, and that was working, and that was really helpful for us. We did not get any bad media in Israel about electrosensitivity until this week. All the articles, all the TV shows, everything was supportive. Nobody tried to present it as a psychological issue. As I said, the media was very helpful for us. So this is what we did in Israel. After we lost the Supreme Court case, I had to decide what I'm doing next. And it was really tough for me what happened, but I had to think, and my conclusion was that until things are not changing in the US, they would not change in a meaningful way. And so I decided to come back to the US, and because you see, there is a change going on. There's a change in France and change in England and in Canada, but I think that we need to change things in the US in order for them to change in a big way. So then I had to think, so what it is that I should do in the US, because there's endless way in which we can act and do this work, as you all know. And I spent about 4 or 5 months just thinking. I went and met with a lot of people and spent a lot of time thinking, and still I know there's a lot of potential paths that we can take, but I had to find a path that is, fit me and my character, and that I would think to be the most effective for me at least. And my conclusion was that it's time that we go for the head. It's time we go for the government. We've been doing in the U.S. a lot of work. People have been doing work in their states, in their cities, in their towns, and there was some change. But it seems to me weird that there's a government who is doing this stuff, who is putting out this technology out there, who is telling the people that they cannot object cell towers for health reasons. So it's actually forcing people out of their houses and out of their homes against their constitutional rights, and nobody's going to the government. So it's about time I decided we educate the government, we educate Congress, and we demand action. My conclusion was also that we have to take a whole different path. Industry proven to us that it's using science as a way to actually give legitimacy to what it's doing. So whether it was tobacco, asbestos, lead, etc., they actually have been using science ironically. There's a scientist in Stanford University. His name is Professor Robert Proctor. He's a science historian. And what he's been doing throughout his career is learn how the tobacco industry lied to the public for over 40 years. And he introduced a new term into the English dictionary, and it's called agnotology, which is how you use deceit to sell your product. And that's exactly what this wireless industry has been doing. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Tom Wheeler, but Tom Wheeler, who is now the head of the FCC, which is the Federal Communication Commission, which is the agency that regulates wireless technology in the US, was before that the head of the CTIA, which is the cell phone industry or the wireless industry lobbying organization. I just bought a book by George Carlo. I don't know if you know George Carlo, but 25 years ago, the wireless industry was forced to put $28 million towards researching the harms of wireless technology. So guess who was their head of, at the time, was Tom Wheeler. And George Carlo was put to head that program for the CTIA. When the studies they funded found that there are potentially harm caused by this technology, George Carlo asked for more money. He didn't get it. So he left the CTIA and decided to become a sort of a whistleblower. He published a book, forgot the name of the book, I'm sorry, and I've been just reading it now. But so I just opened accidentally a page, and there is a letter there written to Tom Wheeler from the FDA in 1993, I think it was. And the FDA said that they are very concerned by his last public relation, by his last press conference. What he was saying that press conference was, yes, we are studying the harm, but we are sure there are not going to be any harm found. So then the FDA was writing him a letter saying, we're really concerned with your approach. If you do not find, something to that extent, if you expect not to find harm, then probably you're not going to find them, and we do not appreciate that kind of an approach. But, when there's a person, and you saw him on this video, how charismatic he is, and those people who write gentle letters are not going to stop people like Tom Wheeler. And Tom Wheeler has been unstoppable for the past 25 years, and he's now regulating that industry. The agenda that this guy has been leading for the past 25 years has been to push this technology, not letting anything stop him or the industry he's been representing. And I think the worst of it is now we see with, well, not the worst of it, the first, a huge step for them was the 1996 Telecommunication Act that, and I don't know how many from here, Section 704 said that we cannot object wireless technology infrastructure for health or environmental reasons. So that is a huge violation of state rights, and that's a huge violation of individual rights, of constitutional rights. So that was a huge step for them, because that essentially enabled them to do whatever it is that they want, wherever it is that they want, and took any power from people and from the state. Now, what we're seeing is, the end of it is now is 5G. So Tom Wheeler is now the regulator of this industry. He's the head of the FCC, and he's telling us, at the same time that the NTP study, at the time that the NTP study is coming out, which is the only...
For you.
in the past 20 years, the federal government funded only 2 studies, as absurd as it sounds, on wireless technology. NTP is the second study. And so while the NTP study is coming out, showing and proving beyond any doubt, and it actually caused a lot of scientists and government people around the world to admit harms, Tom Wheeler is coming out saying, we are not going to wait and check for any health issues, we're just going to move forward. And that is, for me, evil, and there is a big problem when someone in government is allowed to say that and not be brought to any proceedings that ask questions, and that's in a gentle way to say. So we have a problem. So there is a villain, and the villain is Tom Wheeler, and we have to do something to stop him. And because I think that he is really the force behind it all. And
Well, there's a much bigger force than Tom Wheeler.
there's a huge industry. So anyway, so our approach now is to go for DC, to fight Congress, not to fight Congress, probably more like educate Congress, to fight the government and demand that they listen. So I think that one of the ways we think we should do this is actually the same way we did in Israel. Congress has a lot of people who have been using this technology obsessively. So it was my assumption that we are going to find a lot of people in Congress who are sick. And Kevin and I went to DC that week of the 5G hearing. And we wanted to test this assumption. So we actually went very spontaneously. We didn't have much planning. And we found that assumption was very true. We found a lot of congressmen and staffers with brain tumors, as Kevin discussed. And we also found a lot of people with electrosensitivity. And we started having lists of all the people we found in Congress with symptoms. And we believe that this is probably the best way we should approach this issue, because every person who is sick is going to become an ally. I hope so anyway. And it's difficult because a lot of CTIA, the wireless industry lobbying is very rich lobbying company, and they're funding a lot of people in Congress. So we are definitely have a lot of work cut out for us. But we believe that what we're doing is right, and we believe that this is what we should do. And we do hope and believe that a lot of the people in Congress are good people who ran for Congress because they wanted to create good change and care about people. So we do hope that between all of these good people and between all of these people in Congress who are suffering already from wireless related conditions will decide to join us in our efforts. And our efforts essentially are going to be the same as we did in Israel. We're just going to try and put pressure in all directions that we can. It's still, we do have kind of like a plan as to what we want to do and what we want to achieve. Clearly, we want the Section 704 of the Telecommunication Act repealed. Clearly, we want the authority to regulate the wireless industry to be taken away from the FCC. The FCC is not the right agency to regulate it. We want it to be returned to the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. They are the right agency to regulate this issue. They used to be the agency that regulated this issue until CTIA successfully got the government to take that right from the EPA and move it to the FCC.
When was that?
I think it was a process between 93 and 96, if I remember correctly. There was
administration.
They had a few. Sorry, just a second.
And that was Tom Wheeler's doing?
Yeah, he was the head of the city, if I'm not mistaken, already in '93. So they had big conferences and committees that were checking the harms of wireless, and the EPA actually said that the current safety standards, which are the thermal. I'll explain. So the thermal safety standard, that's a safety standard that is currently in place. And if people do not know what it is, I'll explain it in a few words. There is not, all of this wireless technology is using the part of the spectrum, of the electromagnetic spectrum of microwave frequencies. And it's part of the non-ionizing frequencies. What is ionizing? Ionizing is when this radiation has enough energy that when it's touching your body, it can immediately cause impact on the molecular structure. And so ions become free, and it's causing immediate damage to your body. Non-ionizing radiation is believed to not have that energy to cause that direct harm. It doesn't mean that it doesn't cause harm. It doesn't cause direct harm, but it was proven by thousands and thousands of research studies that it caused other harms indirectly, including, as the NTP study proved, DNA damage. But the assumption was, and it's not something that was ever proven positively, that this non-ionizing radiation does not cause any harm unless it is in such intensity that it can change the temperature of the cell, which is what's called the thermal levels. But again, that was proven incorrect already decades ago with thousands and thousands of studies. This radiation can cause a lot of damage to every organ and every system in the human body without causing any change of temperature. Now, so this alleged safety standard is based on only radiation that is so strong that it's causing immediate thermal change. It does not include any long-term, low-level radiation that may cause a lot of harm indirectly and in a slow way. And so our safety standards have been proven not relevant already decades ago, and they continue to be relevant, and the science on this topic is continued to be ignored. Now, and that's the problem. And one of the problems that I noticed also in Israel is the scientists. Clearly, industry has been using science as a way to, create dispute, continue this alleged dispute. And however, now we are, as Kevin said, we're in a place where we do not need to look anymore to science. The real evidence are the people who got interest from this technology. So when you have so much evidence, human evidence as to harm, science should have been moot. This alleged dispute should have been moot. Mm-hmm. And this is exactly why I started this organization, which is called We Are the Evidence. So not only science has proven that this technology is harmful in thousands of studies and in levels which are million times and more lower than the alleged safety standards, the real evidence is the people who got sick from it. And this is really what we need to bring into Congress. We do not need more discussion of science. There is more than enough science. We need to bring the real evidence, which is the people who got harmed. And this is exactly one of the things we want to do in Congress. As I said, we want to make a lot of congressmen realize that they themselves are sick from it. But we also want to bring these people who got sick from it as a proof of harms and get them to do something.
What's the test that your congressman took?
It's not a test, but it's this is I will say there's it seems that there's a complete loss of common sense among people. If a child, I'll tell you a story. I went to when I was looking for a house in Israel, which was a really difficult mission. I worked 7 months to try and find one house I can be in. So I went to see one house, and the owner of that house told me that he's been suffering from this also for years since he was in the army. Then he asked me to come and measure the radiation in his house. I said, no problem. I'm going to his house, and he calls his son, like a 10, 11-year-old child, said, I want you to come and listen to her. So I took my meter, I showed them how much radiation the wireless router is emitting, explained what it means. And I already know the looks. I noticed that the child is looking at me in a weird way. And at a certain point, the father had to go somewhere, and I stayed by myself with the child. Immediately, the child tells me, every time I use my cell phone, and he got an iPhone 6 as a gift from his mother. His parents are divorced, so, parents are competing for who's getting the more expensive gifts. So I said, every time I use my iPhone, I get pain inside my brain. So this child did not tell me that he had pain in his head. He described the pain as having a pain inside his brain. So is this child imagining what he feels? I mean, he never heard about electrosensitivity. He loves his cell phone like nothing else. Without his cell phone, he's not going to have any social life nowadays. So clearly that was the reason also he didn't tell his father nothing about it until then. So, and this was not the only time this happened to me. I cannot tell you how many children are hiding their pains and their symptoms from the parents. And again, there's a lot of them. And I cannot tell you how many children I spoke to who wants to commit suicide now that once they realize they cannot use this technology and it's affecting their social life, they don't see a future considering everything is wireless. I mean, the amount of heartbreaking stories I can tell you is heartbreaking.
Let's write a book together, sweetheart.
Yeah. So
That's why they make speakerphones.
to answer your question, people have common sense. The most basic way doctors are supposed to make a diagnosis if a person is sick is by the person's ability to correlate between the cause and the symptoms. So if you hold your cell phone and you have a pain in your hand, and you hold a cell phone and you have pain in your head, that should, and you're a reasonable person who is pretty functioning in society and are clearly articulate and do not have any psychological problem, and considering it's very reasonable that a technology that uses radiation, i.e. electricity, and consider our body as electric being, so it makes a lot of sense that this technology will affect our body. And so you do not need tests. People like migraines, there's no test for migraines. There's no known mechanism for migraines. The only way doctors are diagnosing migraines is by the way the person is describing their headache. It's a very specific headache. So there shouldn't be, even if there were not any other tests for electrosensitivity, if a person comes and say, I have a pain in my hand, a pain in my head, that should be more than enough to understand that this person is suffering from the cell phone and not from the red pepper they ate in the morning. Yes?
So I just want to know what are you doing next?
So, tomorrow at 12 o'clock, I'm packing my car and going for 3 weeks in DC to continue what we started doing. So, as I said, we decided to be the lobby company for on the wireless issue. And we decided that Congress is the place we should work.
So
and
what
the
does that
government.
look like when you say you're going to D.C.?
Yeah.
Are you lobbying? Are you meeting with Congress?
There's a lot of things. As you said, we developed conceptually a strategy, and I don't want to give all its details right now, but we want to see what parts of our strategy are going to work the fastest and what parts are going to be the most efficient, and follow and see what happens. So we're working in various directions. We're trying to meet with as many congressmen as possible. Watson asked me to mention a week after the week that followed DC, there was the Republican conference. One of the things I'm not doing, I'm not telling anyone what my political views is, because I don't think they're important. I think the biggest harm right now, and the biggest threat we all experience is microwave radiation. So I would work with any government and with anyone who will work on this issue. So we did go to the Republican conference, and the idea was to try and talk directly with as many congressmen and senators as we can, and that's exactly what we did. We found a lot of creative ways, and I can tell you, Kevin is the most creative person I know. It was really amusing, but one day he decided that we are going to go to the media center, and somehow we were able to go through security, and we did go to the media center, and we talked to dozens and dozens of media people. Now, we did not, we knew that we were not going to be interviewed at that event, essentially, but it was a really, really good time. We could talk to them and introduce this issue with them, hopefully to create future interest in it. Another thing we did was, there was a lot of media on the streets. A lot of media on the streets. So I got a very cute hat with a lot of sparkles of the US flag. So, and actually that day, I think I was interviewed 25 times, and I'm not exaggerating. Now, again, none of these interviews was aired, but we got a lot of really interesting contacts from that, and we are following on these contacts. The last day, what we did was we went to the fourth floor of the stadium where this event took place, and we were waiting by the elevators in the place where all the congressmen were coming out of interviews, etc., etc. We talked to about 30 or 40 congressmen directly, so we didn't have to go through the whole process of meetings. And again, a lot of very interesting contacts got developed. So we're using, I did not follow to the Democratic Convention, Kevin did. So we're using every way we can, and all of these meetings that we had really good meetings with New York representative. I don't want to go into details. We have really, really good meetings, and what we're going to do now, we're going to follow up on these meetings, follow up on the media, follow up with other contacts that we make, and hope to create change.
All right, thank you.
So, if we're going to be volunteering, what kind of tasks will we be engaged in?
Alright, so as I said, we need a lot of help, and we need financial help, and we need people to help us in the back office work. We need people to, for example, we need someone to continuously follow the FCC website and see exactly what they're doing, so we know exactly how we need to react. We need people to follow up DC's papers, so we can know, if there's anything interesting that we can follow up and do something about. We need people to help us get meetings. We need people to help us get PR messages outside, help us work with the work we're doing on the media. So there's a lot of help we can use. So what we ask you in this paper, essentially, if you can think about ways you can help. If you know any congressmen, if you know any senators, if you know anyone who works in their offices, if you know media people, and that's with research that we need in order to get information that we need for our work. So there's a lot of ways, and if you can just think of ways that you're good at, or things that you like to do, or things that you think that could be helpful and that you can help us with, then please write them down. The website of my organization was supposed to be launched today, and I don't know if it's now on or not. It might be, but if not, it's definitely going to be on tomorrow. It's more of a face a website. There's a lot of information, but it's not the purpose. The purpose is to be the face of this, and also to ask people to take action on different things. Like, one of the first things I'm going to ask people to do is, those of you who got injured by this technology, to fill a testimonial. What I want to do on the website is share as many stories as possible. So if I talk to a congressman and they check me out and they see all the story of all these amazing people who got sick, children and adults, they can see it also. I want to use this testimonials. For example, if we decide to try and get a hearing in Congress for those who got injured, I want to be able to have a testimonial to show, here, this is a package of people who got sick from this technology. This is the evidence why you need to take action now to do something to stop this insanity.
There was already a lawsuit that was won like 2+ years ago in Italy for a tumor from a cell phone.
There was, but there's actually a lot of lawsuits going on right now. There are 29 brain tumor cases in the U.S., and it's a really good case because it's been done by a few. It's, like when you find the industry, you have to have very, very deep pockets. Very few law firms can have this bucket. So what it is a few law firms that created a consortium. That's exactly what they did with the tobacco industry as well. They created a consortium of law firms to fund this kind of a lawsuit. There are 13 or 16 cases represented by this consortium, and the other 13 or 16, the total of 29 cases, the other are represented by individual law firms. And the financial industry, the wireless industry submitted what's called evidentiary hearing or Dober hearing, which is they claim that our scientists and the science that we rely on does not meet the legal standards that science should be in order to proceed in court to actually a trial. And this hearing ended a year ago, and our side won. 5 out of 8 experts that our side introduced were approved by the court. I'm not sure exactly the status, and I'm sorry. I think there was some kind of appeal. I don't know where it stands right now, and I have to follow. Since then, also, there have been a few places around the world lawsuits of electrosensitive people won. A year ago, a woman in France was acknowledged by the Social Security Court as being electrosensitive, and she's getting a monthly disability payment for her allergy to Wi-Fi. Last month, an Ericsson employee in Spain, also recognized by the court as suffering from electrosensitivity, and forced Ericsson to pay him money. People don't know, but actually there is a New York case from 1982 of a person who was working on antennas and became electrosensitive, and as Robert said, it's called microwave sickness, and the court ruled that he's suffering from allergy to microwaves, and he was awarded disability payment, so he does get it for electrosensitivity. So there is change. It's a slow change, and the courts are difficult and slow, but we do feel that there is a change, and we do move forward. Yes.
In your pursuit of relief, becoming better, were you involved in shielding? I mean, to protect ourselves, there are materials that you can use that shield out this non-ionizing radiation.
Well, what I learned, I was really extremely sensitive, and one of the, I don't know if it's a good thing, the different ways electrosensitivity has been manifested. Some people react immediately, some people react with delay. So luckily for me, I was reacting very fast and very acutely. So I was really looking for relief, and one of the things I was checking was shielding. And actually, I was one of those people who really suffered badly from the shielding. And what I learned very quickly was, I don't know if people know, the way the shielding works is it has metal in it, and metal is supposed to block radiation, electromagnetic fields. But metal is also something that is reactive to this electromagnetic field. And our body is made of electromagnetic fields. Our heart emits electromagnetic fields, our brain emits electromagnetic fields. So if you put these shieldings on you, it may protect you from some microwaves. Number one, if you don't shield yourself properly, it actually might increase the radiation, because if radiation coming from one angle and it's not blocked properly, it's getting reflected back and increase the radiation. That's number one. Then again, there's the issue of the metal. If there is sun and it's warm, then the electron in that metal starts to move, and you actually create more exposure. Also, your body emits those frequencies, and if you have this shielding on you, then it's coming back to you, blocking them from going out. So there's it's a double-edged sword. For some people, I know it's really saved their life.
But I'm talking more in terms of shielding
house?
Paint, yeah, and
shielding
building
paints,
materials.
again, my approach to the way it's possible, as much as possible, was to avoid it completely. Try and find places, because I could not tolerate it. Again, if you have Wi-Fi coming from your neighbors and you did not shield your house properly, you're actually causing more harm and increasing the radiation. So if you do it, you have to make sure that you do it really well. Otherwise, it can cause more problems. So yes, there are ways to shield it, but you have to be really smart about it and be very professional about it. I don't know if I answered.
Thank you. No. It's a consideration that you had.
Yeah.
It's complicated.
It is very complicated.
I met somebody years ago who actually had a copper-lined jacket. It set it up a tag on the inside of their coat. This is 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But you said you went in with a hat they really liked.
Yeah, I had, but eventually.
What needs to happen is the tinfoil hat thing needs to be really fashionable. People really need to like it, and then wonder why we. I never learned why people wear a tinfoil hat when I first heard the term.
Well, when I became sad,
it's like you were just afraid of anything. You wear an aluminum foil, but no, the aluminum foil is to protect you from.
There's a gentleman in Israel that's.
Amir, yeah.
Amir is making.
Alright, so if you, I'm going to, I do not make a recommendation, but Robert is right. There is a guy in Israel who's very electrosensitive, and he's a, I want to say saint, really. He was, I don't know how you say it in English. He's not an engineer, but there's something almost like an engineer, like he's an electronic engineer, and he was working for Heidegg, and he was one of those who always were electrosensitive. From the first time he tried to use a cell phone, he had symptoms. It wasn't like me that I used it for 10 years obsessively and then suddenly something happened. He could never use this. And he became very electrosensitive, and he's been helping a lot of people in Israel. He's been doing amazing work, and he's very, very good with the technical part. And so one of the things he's doing is he's helping people figure out what's going on in their houses, etc. But he also started to develop this product. And but he's selling these products, and he's giving people all the right warnings, because again, not everyone can use it. It's not going to help everyone. And so when he sells it, he actually tells you to see if it works for you or not. And he does not sell it to people who are not electrosensitive. People who are not electrosensitive cannot feel if this is good for them or bad for them. So this is actually can harm them more than it's doing good. So if you're not electrosensitive, do not use those shielding materials at all. So his name is Amir, and his website is www.norad, from the word radiation, 4nu.com, and the website that he sells his product is for EHS, like electrohypersensitivity, by EHS. So again,
there's a store right in Albany that sells It's in Troy?
Yeah, I have a
didn't know.
catalog for them. They sell everything, fabric for grounding.
I don't want to say that one problem I had when I became electrosensitive, I didn't know a lot, but I was desperate. I couldn't sleep for a year, and I wish I was exaggerating. I actually did not sleep for a year. And I was desperate to sleep, and like many other people, I was desperate to try a lot of things because I wanted to sleep. And unfortunately, these companies, many of them, do not tell you really, what works or doesn't. They try to oversell you stuff. And I would go for people, I would try and buy, if I buy something, for people who are electrosensitive, for people who do understand this, who do understand the ins and outs of this, rather than just buy whatever is out there. Yes?
We need radiation-free zones in every state.
No, that's not gonna happen, but we do have a radiation-free zone in this country, in this Greenbank, West Virginia. And there's actually a village right next to Greenbank for sale right now
Yeah.
for $1 million. I'd love to buy it.
Well, I did try Greenback in my desperation when I came back from Israel after 6 or 7 months that I was really sick. I was really just wanted to sleep, and I heard about it. I took the car and drove there, and it was the first time after 7 months that I could actually think, that my brain was clear enough to think. And I remember, so I tried and moved there. I found a job in a local farm, like a bed and breakfast with a farm. And the thing is, I never pet animals, but suddenly I was responsible for 15 horses, 3 llamas, 5 goats, and 1 sheep.
And the name of the town is
Greenbank, West Virginia.
Please tell people how they can contact you.
Yeah, I remember that. I'm so sorry that I forgot to put contact. So first of all, on the website, you have the website, and there's contact form through the website. But my email is D, like my first name Dafna, so D like David, and my last name Tachover, which is TACHOVER @gmail.com. Also, the email of the organization, which is contact@wearetheevidence.org, is working. Also, my email Dafna@wearetheevidence.org will be working too. So you can contact me through these ways.
Is that on the email you sent out to everybody?
No, it isn't.
But again, it's really simple. It's my name, Dafna, at the organization, the name you have there, wearetheevidence.org. And just email me. And also, if you want, you can just leave the, I saw that a lot of people left them. Thank you very much. Any other questions?
Why are you avoiding me?
No, because you're talking anyway. Yes.
How do you manage when you go to DC?
Okay, so this is like, I live now in a whole new world.
And why I said less horrible is that when you're in the car, and that it was more horrible is that I thought that was relief. But
well,
but not when you have to be away from a home.
I can tell you that actually Woodstock has a very special place in my heart, because a year and a half ago, I think you had the symposium in Woodstock about Wi-Fi. Mm-hmm. And that was, actually, it was my first outing to society was when you filmed the Take Back Your Power. That was the first time I went out of my prison cell on the mountain. And then the second time was when you had the Wi-Fi symposium. I really felt I have to go because, with my Wi-Fi case in Israel, I don't think there's many people who know more than I about Wi-Fi. And I really wanted to go. And until then, all of my work was through the phone and through what I write. I never really talked about it in public. And I remember in the end of this symposium, I stood up and took one of the questions. And after that, a lot of people came to me. And then I understood how important it is to be face-to-face in people when you talk about it. So that day, I decided I don't care if I'm going to die on that plane. I'm going to go to Israel for the last hearing of my case. Because we won the first stage of the case. We won it, and then we went to the next stage. And because in Israel, when you do Supreme Court, you first have to go through the first stage, and only if we waited to go to the next. And we did win the first one, and it was after we won the second hearing. And I decided to go. A week later, I was on a plane to Israel. And that was like the biggest change in my life, because I took a huge risk. And actually I managed. So until then, I had no way to know how better I am. But I discovered that I was much better.
You got better being in the
isolation. I really isolated myself for 3.5 years. And I can say, I don't like to talk about, I mean, my approach was, I know a lot of people try a lot of things. My approach was not to try a lot of things, because I said, I don't know what's got harmed in my body. And if I try everything out there, there's a good chance I'm going to harm my body more. So the way I thought it was, the most important thing I can do for my body is avoidance. That's for sure going to help. And that's really all I did. I did take some supplements here and there. I did discover that when I get severe headaches from this, the only thing that helps me is coffee, and I do not like coffee otherwise. But I just took like vitamin C, vitamin B. But that day, when I was taking the airplane, I did take melatonin, because I knew that I have to find a way to reduce the reactivity of my body. Because if I sit in a plane with Wi-Fi and people are on with this stuff, I don't know if I'm surviving this. So I did take melatonin, and I survived the flight almost with no problems. And that's when I thought, about melatonin. And then, I don't know, the NTP study that came out this week, they announced that they also found DNA damage. And they confirmed a study that was done by Henry Lay, who is a professor in Washington University. And then Kevin called me and asked me to go with him to the conference. And I thought, anyway, this is going to be an historical event. I have to go. Then he asked me to go to DC. I said, are you crazy? And guys, that was the first time I was out there, and I was shocked when I was in DC, and I was doing this work 18 hours a day. And it's not that I did not feel this radiation, I felt it, but I knew exactly where the router was, but instead of it like pain penetrating, I just felt it as if it's like there, and it was reflecting back. And I survived it day after day after day. Then we went to the conference, and I was sitting in this stadium, and people all around with their cell phones and you know, taking pictures of Trump non-stop, and I felt nothing. I was fine, and there was like 400 media outlets and tons of antennas, and so I don't know what happened, but somewhere along the way I guess I did something right, and it worked. So.
Explain what happened in Haifa.
Okay, Haifa. Wow, I'm hot. Haifa, okay. So, as I said, we did a lot of work in Israel in a lot of various directions, so we tried to put the pressure in many places as possible. I think that the key issue was really how supportive the media was. There was a program on TV that we were working really hard on. It was aired in March, I think it was, but we were working on it before. What happened was we were working on a show, and they were doing a program about the diseases of the 21st century. And they wanted to put about 10 minutes about electrosensitivity, but we convinced them that this is a much bigger issue. And they decided to do a whole program about electrosensitivity and about the Wi-Fi in school issue. And so they got completely convinced. And I think it was like one of our greatest achievements. It was aired in the highest, the best time, with the highest rating at night in the best channel with one of the best TV hosts. And they had a lot of promos before, and the promos were so scary. I would get calls from my friends, Dafna, why do we have to see you every night now in our face on TV? They did a really good promo, and they put it non-stop, so it created a lot of buzz. Then a program came out, and it was not a maybe, it was not, there wasn't any subtle message. It was very aggressive. And it started by saying 10% of the population already suffer from this condition. We need to stop it, and we need to stop it now. So there were no maybes, no questions marked, and it was saying there is an epidemic going on. And that was really very effective. It created a lot of buzz in Israel. And 3 days later, the mayor of the city of Haifa, which is the most high-tech city in Israel, that's where all the headquarters of Motorola, Facebook, Google, all the development centers are sitting there. So 3 days after the show, the mayor came out and said, we are removing all Wi-Fi from schools. So it's not only the TV. There were a lot of parents working on the ground, but clearly no sane mayor will do anything unless he knows, or no politician, there's media to support his decision. But the truth was that we already got him to say that in a different way 3 years ago while at the case. We were fighting to remove the Wi-Fi from the schools there. And they did remove it from the 4 schools in which the Ministry of Education that was telling the court that they're actually trying to promote wired internet. It was actually the Ministry of Education that put Wi-Fi in 4 schools in Haifa, and we got them removed already before. And the city said that they're not going to put Wi-Fi in other schools. So it was really a decision that was made longer before, but was announced publicly when the public was ready to hear it as a result of the media. So that was, we do hope, I mean, there's a lot of effort done by a lot of people. We never know what it is that is going to change the dynamic and start an opposite trend. But we do believe and hope that that was one of the things that are going to create that change and get other mayors to think and other school principals to think and follow. Yes.
First, I just want to say that your strength and your passion is very infectious.
Thank you.
And it's really beautiful to hear your story and see what your story did for you rather than just to you.
I think you're absolutely right.
And as an EHS victim or sufferer, more like a target, I guess, I can say that an interesting entry point that I have not explored so much when I speak to people, as you do, is this idea that some of us are paying for it in cash and some of us are paying in credit. This is a phrase I found somewhere in my research, and it's been helpful. And yet I come up against this phenomenon in people when you speak to them. It's almost like, oh, well, you're allergic, but I'm not. And I'm so interested in what's happening to you. It's very fascinating. And it goes down like candy because there's something amazing about it when you express it or confess it to others, even the literature. But people in general still think it's not them. There's a phenomenon that comes over somebody. It's almost like you have to go through a heart-wrenching breakup to understand that this can happen to you, and you have to understand directly what a car accident is, so you slow down differently. When somebody else is telling you about their story, there's a phenomenon. I haven't quite articulated it, but you understand this idea that people still think, well, that's you, and it's very interesting. And wow, how do you live?
Even if they believe you,
How do you live in the world? And the idea that, wait a second, I thought I was talking about something that could affect all of us.
Right.
And, it's an interesting thing. When you start ringing the bells about fire, people create elaborate defense mechanisms.
That's cognitive dissonance. That's one of the strongest mechanisms in every human behavior. And that's exactly what's going on.
So, it's like, you have to gauge what level. I mean, of course, at the political level, I'm behind you. I mean, ring the bells. But like when we're talking to people collectively, it's interesting to note that how hard should I hit them with this evidence, and can I confidently say this will come for you?
Okay, so I think from my experience, I think first of all it's always important to feel the person when you speak to them. And with different people, you deploy different techniques, right? So, and it's really a good question how much that person can tolerate, and and you have to be very slow. You have to be very attentive, and think of yourself. As I said, when my ex-husband told me to put on my cell phone, okay, I just smiled, right? So I was not willing or ready to hear more than that. So you have to be really slow and then give them confidence that this is something. Like I remember I met this woman. I went into a mattress store, and I told her I need a mattress without springs. So she tells me and without any metal. And she said, why? And I said, because I have this condition and I suffer from wireless technology and it's reacting with metal. And she said, I said, and then she asked me, how does it manifest? So when a person asks you this kind of question, you know that there's something going on. So then again, I didn't jump on her because I already knew that there was something going on. But I said, no, I have and I started with the simple symptoms that are the most common ones. And I said, some people have tingling in their hands and pain in their head. So I didn't attack her with all my symptoms. So, and said, and there are a lot of people who suffer from it and they just don't understand that there's, it's a bigger issue. So then she said, I have it. So only then I go to the next stage, which be yes, and sometimes I get sleep disturbances. So I don't put it all on them at 1 second. I just let the brain work and think about themselves, and I found it to be quite effective. But again, when I became sensitive, my brother-in-law, who works for SAP, which is a very big high-tech company, like the third biggest software company in the world, he came to visit me in the mountain and he wanted to see what's going on. So, and my family knows me; they don't doubt me or anything. But I remember we were walking, and he was constantly saying, "Yes, but this is 1 in a million." So again, just like you said, he tried to distance himself and make it something like of a normality rather than something very common. Then, weirdly enough, sometimes he would forward my emails to a few friends. Suddenly, his friends coming to him, some people that works with him. Oh, I almost faint in on the flights when I go for business. I have this and this symptoms. And suddenly, he's telling people to contact me. Then there's a family dinner, and he has very small family. Unlike our family, which is huge, he has a small family. And his cousin, he has 2 cousins in Israel. His cousin is coming to his house with her husband, and then she said she stopped working. She cannot tolerate her cell phone. She cannot be anything with her. So this guy has a pretty small family in Israel. So his sister-in-law and one of his 2 cousins are already sick from this. So then slowly, he started to understand that this is bigger than he think it is. It still have cognitive dissonance. He's still using it, but it's a process. Cognitive dissonance, we all have it. I had it when my ex-husband told me to stop using my cell phone or use it less. So slowly. Yes, Terry, just a second, sorry. Yes, Terry.
I just wanted to
Watch
say,
out.
I didn't know
Excuse me,
anything
West.
about you before you came, and
Weston,
I didn't
excuse
know
me.
that you were friends with Michelle, and you're really on the right track. The way that Michelle and I hooked up was, I was an elected official, I was the chairman of the legislature, and she came to me, she came to my house, and she brought her meter, and started talking to me about things, and got me to turn off my Wi-Fi at night, and 'cause I couldn't sleep at all. I was known in the legislature for being up all night. I'd be sitting emails at 3 in the morning.
They just thought that you're a workaholic, right?
Yeah, I can't sleep if the Wi-Fi is on. I just can't. And it's kind of like the hay fever analogy with me. It builds up. It doesn't hit me the second that it comes on, but eventually, if my husband leaves it on for a couple days, it has to be turned off because I can't sleep. So I put it on a timer. Like at 1 a.m. it goes off. I told him between 1 a.m. and 7 a.m. This house is a Wi-Fi free zone. Turn it off.
It's only a switch. I turn off every single device whenever I'm
And-
not using it.
And in order for your body to produce melatonin, you have to have complete darkness anyways, so everything has to go off. But for years, I have been working with this group and working with Michelle and giving her advice on what to do. And, I would see people going down the road of, oh, well, we're going to talk to the Public Service Commission. I always said, well, that doesn't work because they're not elected officials. They could care less. You have to go after the people who are elected. They are the only ones who care. It can be very frustrated dealing with them. Like Kevin, he doesn't care. And Michelle, at a certain point, is like, oh, I just can't deal with them, and I'm just going to go educate people. That's great, but if you really want to change people, you have to do exactly what you're doing. You have to go to the elected officials, because they are the ones that have the power to change the laws, and only them.
Right.
So you're absolutely going down the right path. And
Thank you. Appreciate it.
really, really great that you are.
Thank you. By the way, there were some efforts in DC in 2000. The one congressman that was really active on this was Congressman Kucinich. He's very big on a lot of environmental issues. Unfortunately, I think it was 2012 or 2013 that he was not reelected. But before that, he had 2 hearings in Congress. The last one was in 2009. In 2012, he did introduce a bill, which is a fantastic bill, really well written, and addresses all the issues, the EPA, the FCC, the electrosensitivity. So they did fantastically, but they did not get any traction on it. So one of the things we want to see if we can do is really revive this and bring it back to life.
So it parallels the movie The Insider. The movie
Yeah,
The
yeah,
Insider
exactly.
is exactly this issue all over
and
again.
on all other issues. Whatever issues out there, it's the same tactic. That's what I said in the movie. The industry is using the same tactics again and again. They're just getting better and better with them. And the problem with Wall Street was, again, nobody was sued criminally for what they've done, and this has to change.
What's that called, that technique?
Agnotology. Agnotology. A-G-N-O, agno, T-O, L-O-G-Y. There's a wonderful article, I suggest you read it. It was on BBC, in BBC Online. It's called "The Man Who Studied Ignorance." So I suggest you read it. It's a really nice article.
Is hubris the right
Sorry?
term for that? Hubris?
I don't know. I know gnothology.
Does anyone know what that means?
I don't know.
Is that like not believing that you're affected by nature or something like that?
No, this is something else. What he's talking about is being lied to by industry, manipulated by industry.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Sorry.
It's not going to affect you.
Pleasure to hear you talk.
Thank you.
I'm Jim Davis, the former chairman of the Environmental Commission here in Woodstock. Back during my term of service, we had the mixed blessing of having a retired IBM safety engineer on our team.
Okay.
He was a very big proponent of high-speed broadband for obvious reasons, but he also stipulated Ethernet connected. I don't think the term Wi-Fi had even been coined before he passed away, but he was very hinky about other portable RF chip devices like our Easy Passes.
Right.
Very hinky. One reason, because the government can track your every movement, whether you're going through a toll booth or not, but I suspect he had a non-disclosure agreement with Big Blue that RF chip technology was something he was supposed to keep shut up about if he wanted to get his pension. Just saying.
I just say, like, I think, again, if this technology was not harmful, I think it's a wonderful technology. I loved it. I was addicted to it like everyone else. And the problem is it's extremely harmful. And I always like, so I always thought like, it's really interesting. I don't know if people know, cell phones were first approved by the FCC in 1973. And in 1984, that's when they actually were start to be used commercially, and that's like the 1984 Orwell. I really think it's funny because all of this technology right now, it's and again, I don't think there's a conspiracy, but the way it's been used, it's actually collecting a lot of data that is being used by a lot of companies to do a lot of things. So it's really, it's a big bother watching all over. Anyone else? Any other questions? Wow, that's good. Thank you.
I hope no one has any objections to them being filmed.
Another thing, if people want, this is the part where I don't like, but I can fund all my activity in Israel, but right now, in order to continue and work, we really based on donations. So Weston told me to bring a hat, and I had only my garden hat. If anyone wants, and if not, you can donate through our website, and I do hope you'll be supporting of our work. And thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.